Aero-Therm is a revolutionary reflective coating that provides a lower cost and effective alternative to traditional external and internal wall insulation. The product is applied at just 1mm thick to the internal surfaces of exterior walls and ceilings, creating warm to touch surfaces that reflect heat back into the room. Aero-Therm is made from microscopic reflective glass beads and aerogel, the world's most effective insulant. Please refer to the application instructions on our website for full details on how to apply Aero-Therm. Aero-Therm Products Limited runs an approved installer program. For details about becoming an approved installer, please contact the Aero-Therm Products Sales Office. The application instructions include a full list of the recommended tools. These include a 6mm notched trowel, a large flexible smooth floating trowel, a sponge backed pad with fine finishing paper attached. Your walls must be in a solid state, free from dust, flaking wallpaper or flaking paint. If your walls are not flat, then it is strongly recommended that they are skin plastered before the 1mm coating is applied. Aero-Therm should not be regarded as a plaster that can flatten uneven walls. Any traces of mould should also be completely eliminated before applying the base coat. If a high quality finish is required on external corners, then consider attaching a plasterer's corner bead using either plaster or Aero-Therm itself. The Aero-Therm base coat is a specially formulated primer for use with Aero-Therm. This creates a strong bond and allows the Aero-Therm to dry at the correct rate. You must allow the base coat to fully dry before applying the Aero-Therm. 2 coats should be applied on porous surfaces such as fresh plaster or plasterboard. Guidance on drying times is provided in the application instructions. To prepare the Aero-Therm for trowel application, add a small amount of water, up to and no more than 5%. The porosity of the substrate will determine how much water will need to be added. The more porous the surface, the more water will be required. It is essential to minimise the amount of air being mixed into the Aero-Therm to prevent air pockets showing when applied to the surface. We recommend hand mixing with either a bucket trowel or plasterer's hand mixer, sometimes known as a posser, to produce a smooth consistency. You must ensure it has all been properly mixed through, as the binder may have settled at the bottom of the container. Storing the Aero-Therm tubs upside down will help with this. Mixing to the correct consistency will help make it easier to apply with a trowel. Too dry and the product will curl up away from the surface. Too wet and the product will run down the wall and take longer to dry. We recommend a 6mm notched trowel held at a 30° angle. This will create 2mm ridges which can then be smoothed over to a consistent covering. Filling in any gaps will help achieve a consistent 1mm coating when smoothing over. A clean, large, flexible floating trowel will minimise any trowel marks. Apply each section of Aero-Therm in appropriate quantities depending on your speed of application. Do not leave the trowel lines too long before you float over, as the material dries quickly. It is not possible to float Aero-Therm to a perfectly flat finish. As long as the wall has a consistent 1mm coverage, then be prepared to leave trowel lines in the product and leave it to dry. The sanding process will easily remove any trowel lines. Depth gauges are a useful tool to check you have applied a consistent 1mm coating. Aero-Therm takes between 24 and 48 hours to dry depending on the ambient room temperature. The surface should then be lightly sanded. A handheld sponge float with fine finishing paper should be used to remove any high spots and trowel lines. Brush off dust from the wall and the sander as you go to prevent any build-up causing scratch marks. Aero-Therm is much easier to sand as soon as it has dried. Leaving it a further 24 hours after it has dried will make it more difficult to sand. Bear this in mind when planning your project. Scrape off any excess material into the corners. Smooth down corners with additional Aero-Therm using either a suitable tool or your finger. Fill in any remaining indentations with a general filler using a palette knife. You can then go over the whole area with fine finishing paper. Leave Aero-Therm to fully dry by heating and regularly ventilating the room. The drying time will depend on climatic conditions and should be a minimum of a week before decoration is applied. When painting, follow industry best practice as if painting new plaster, allowing each paint layer to dry properly before applying further coats. We recommend using a moisture meter to ensure that each layer is dry before proceeding onto the next layer. Aero-Therm leaves a semi-hard finish on a wall. In most instances this will be perfectly acceptable as a wall finish and can be easily repaired with filler or Aero-Therm itself if it is dented. If a more durable finish is required, then lining paper can be applied to the wall, which itself can be wallpapered or painted. The finished product, when painted or lining papered, you don't even know it's there, unless you touch the wall and feel how warm it is.